What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Monday, January 22nd, 2024, and I have an emergency update to share with you guys. Right now, it is 2:33 p.m. Eastern Time here in the United States, and I wanted to update you on this mysterious radio signal that has been transmitting over the last 24 hours on as many as 64 radio frequencies simultaneously worldwide. And this radio signal has been heard from Alaska all the way to Italy and everywhere in between on multiple frequencies, 64 frequencies. And apparently, this signal is being broadcasted at 1200 kilohertz intervals. So let's say, for example, 5800 kilohertz, 7000 kilohertz, 8200 kilohertz, and so on and so forth. And we actually have this video here that was provided by a shortwave radio expert as he's going through the different frequencies, and you can hear this strange pulse. Okay, it almost sounds like a metronome or the ticking of a clock. Now, a lot of shortwave radio experts are saying that this is the arming of the Russian perimeter system. Okay, perimeter is also known as dead hand. This is the Russian doomsday weapon. And the way that it works is Russia has sensors across their country that can detect nuclear blasts. And these sensors are connected to a sophisticated computer algorithm. And if the algorithm detects blasts on the territory of Russia, and if it determines that no human has launched a retaliation, it will auto launch all of Russia's nuclear missiles at various pre planned targets. Okay, so it's basically an auto launching system. It's very sophisticated. It was built during the Cold War by the Soviets. And apparently, the last time this signal was heard was in 1991 during the fall of the USSR. Okay, so we can't confirm 100% that this is true, that Russia has turned on their perimeter dead hand system, but that's what a lot of shortwave radio experts are saying, and that the last time they heard this pulse was in 1991. Now, I want to just remind you guys of two big things that could potentially have influenced Russia to turning on their dead hand system. So some of this information may have slipped through the cracks over the weekend, especially the situation in Donetsk, where Russia is now blaming Ukraine for launching ordnance at a market. And apparently that caused 28 people to expire. Okay. And Dmitry Peskov, the spokesman for the Kremlin, said that the situation was a monstrous act of terrorism. Okay, so the Kremlin spokesman is calling this an act of terror. All right, and they're blaming Ukraine for it. They're saying that Ukraine launched ordnance, potentially NATO ordnance, at this market in Donetsk. And what I think we're seeing here is Russia is about to blame NATO weapons for being used on this market. And remember that Russia considers Donetsk part of its territory now, okay? Putin officially annexed Donetsk and the Donbass region a year and a half ago, okay? So it falls under Russia's nuclear umbrella. And the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov arrived in New York today for the UN Security Council meeting this week on Ukraine and the Middle East. So I don't know if this situation here with the radio signal is related to Donetsk, and maybe Russia is going to launch some kind of surprise operation against NATO because of this. They're going to blame NATO weapons and they're going to say enough is enough. And they may launch some ordnance at NATO facilities that are storing these weapons or producing them. Also, NATO started their largest exercise in decades today, with as many as 90,000 troops participating right on the borders with Russia. 31 countries, including Sweden and Moldova, will be taking part in these maneuvers, and Moldova is going to be hosting these NATO forces on their territory. Okay, so NATO forces will be going to Moldova as part of a quote unquote exercise. In my opinion, this is not an exercise. I think this is preparations for a full scale confrontation with Russia, and they're forward deploying troops to the eastern flank of NATO, specifically vulnerable countries like Moldova, like the Baltics, like Poland, like Sweden, like Finland, because this exercise is going to take place in NATO's eastern flank. Okay, so this is, in my opinion, a cover for a forward deployment. Apparently, 50 warships and over 80 fighter jets, including F 35s, and at least 1,000 tanks will take part in the exercise. It's going to last all the way through June, and it's going to span from Romania up to Norway. Okay, and we're hearing rumors that NATO is going to be practicing conducting a full blockade of Russia's Kaliningrad and Russia's access to the Baltic Sea. So I don't know if this is related to the exercise and the situation in Donetsk. It could be. Maybe Russia is going to do something, or they're afraid that they're going to get uh, ATTACKED. Okay, I'm sorry, I can't say the word. But let me just play this for you guys if you haven't heard it yet. Apparently, this was not heard since 1991. So here you can see him changing the frequency up to 7,000 hertz. And I want to just let you guys know that I have researched this pretty thoroughly last night, and I've talked to several people who are considered experts in shortwave radio, and they can confirm that this is most likely the Russian perimeter dead hand system that has been armed, and that the last time this was heard was 1991. And Maria Zakharova, the spokesman for the Russian Foreign Ministry, said the increase in NATO activities and military capabilities near Russian borders is a provocation. It only leads to an escalation of military tensions, contrary to what Western politicians try to convince the normal citizens of Europe. So something's going on here, guys. I don't know what it is. Very strange signal. Hasn't been heard since 1991. Could be the Russian dead hand system. Nobody really knows for sure. It's all just an educated guess. Okay, but many experts are saying that this is the perimeter system that was activated. Okay, that's the Russian automatic nuclear launching system. I want to just show you guys what we got going on over the U.S. right now. We currently have a U.S. nuclear war command and control plane up in the air over Florida. These planes are responsible for remotely launching all of our Minuteman III ICBMs, and they are also responsible for communicating with our submerged nuclear-armed submarines. They can issue what are known as nuclear attack options, and they can also issue launch orders from the president. And we also have this nuke sniffer plane that took off from Offutt Air Base, home of Strategic Command, flew all the way to Gillette, Wyoming, and then turned around and came back. We also have a U.S. presidential Doomsday plane doing loops over Offutt Air Base, okay, home of Strategic Command, and it's been doing loops here for the last few hours, okay, right over Omaha, Nebraska. Look at this, okay, just hundreds and hundreds of loops, just absolutely insane. It has the call sign Gordo 14. And Taiwan has apparently deployed their Skybow 3 anti-aircraft system to Kenting in the Pingtung County in the southern part of Taiwan to protect airspace due to recent Chinese PLA violations of their air defense identification zone. So let me just play this video for you guys. Okay, it shows the Taiwanese military moving this air defense system, Skybow 3, okay, to the southern part of Taiwan and deploying it. And there were some more balloons that flew over Taiwan overnight last night. There were also some planes from the Chinese military that flew into Taiwan's ADIZ. Okay, so the situation between Taiwan and China is continuing to escalate. And speaking of China, there was a powerful 7.0 magnitude earthquake in China on the southern border with Uzbekistan, and this was in Xinjiang province. Okay, so a 7.0 magnitude earthquake in southern China on their border with Uzbekistan. Absolutely insane. Very weird timing. And the Islamic resistance in Iraq carried out an offensive action against the U.S. military base Al Assad in western Iraq with drones, according to a letter of confession. They also carried out an offensive action against the U.S. base in eastern Syria. Okay, so they are claiming they carried out offensive actions against 2 U.S. bases today, guys. Okay, and this comes after the massive offensive action over the weekend involving dozens and dozens of airborne projectiles that can make a kaboom when they land. Okay, and the EU has agreed today that a military operation in the Red Sea will begin to secure shipping lanes. Okay, so the EU is going to start their own military operation to keep the shipping lanes open in the Red Sea. And U.S. defense officials said Houthi actions in the Red Sea increase the risk of a regional conflict breaking out, and the situation is currently very dangerous. The situation in the Red Sea is the worst since the so-called tanker war in the 1980s. Our assessment is that commercial cargo ships still face a serious threat from the Houthis in the Red Sea. Okay, so risk of regional conflict, very dangerous situation, worst since the 1980s. Okay, still a serious threat. Okay, so this situation in the Red Sea is not going away. It's only getting worse and worse. It's only escalating, just like I warned you guys about months ago. And this update was sponsored by My Patriot Supply. Guys, they have brought back their 25% discount on their 3-month emergency food supply. And to get the deal, you got to go to preparewith.nyprepper.com. The link is in the description below this video. But this 3-month emergency food supply is freeze dried, so it has a 25-year shelf life, and it's all contained within 6 rugged water resistant buckets, and free shipping is included. So again, use the link preparewithnyprepper.com to get 25% off of the My Patriot Supply 3-month emergency food supply. It's really a no-brainer. 25-year shelf life. You don't have to worry about your food preps going bad. You don't have to worry about rotating anything. And it's all contained within 6 buckets. So you can find the space to store 6 buckets, guys. And they also have a general store. If you click on the My Patriot Supply logo at the top of the page, when you get to preparewithnyprepper.com, you can access their general store, and they have all kinds of prepping and survival items for sale. They have MREs, they have survival seeds, they have potassium iodide, they have survival bars. So check it out. Preparewithnyprepper.com to get 25% off of the My Patriot Supply 3-month emergency food supply, and the link is in the description below this video. And Vice Admiral Brad Cooper, the head of the Navy's Fifth Fleet, said Iran is directly involved in the Houthis' Red Sea actions. He said, what I'll say is Iran is clearly funding, they're resourcing, they are supplying, and they're providing training. They're obviously very directly involved. There's no secret there. Wow, guys, okay? So the head of the Navy's Fifth Fleet is saying Iran is directly involved, and this is coming after Reuters reported the same thing, okay? And I reported on that on Saturday if you want to go back and watch my video from Saturday. And Yemen sources are reporting that the Houthis have deployed a large number of sea mines off the coasts of Hodeidah, Al Salif, Ras Abbas, and the port of Al Lahia to counter a possible amphibious landing operation by U.S. and British Marines in the Red Sea. So the Houthis have mined the entire coastline of Yemen, basically, all the major cities, to prevent Allied forces from making amphibious landings. And an Al Mayadeen military source said all American military ships represent legitimate targets for the Yemeni armed forces and will be targeted at a high rate in the coming days. And the Houthis are claiming that they carried out an operation against an American flagged and American owned cargo ship, the MV Ocean Jazz, today as it transited the southern Red Sea. Let me read to you a statement from the Houthi general Yahya Saree. He just said this about an hour ago. The naval forces of the Yemeni armed forces carried out a military operation targeting an American military cargo ship, Ocean Jazz, in the Gulf of Aden using appropriate naval ordnance. The Yemeni armed forces affirm that retaliation against American and British offensive actions is inevitable, and any new aggression will not go unpunished. The Yemeni armed forces persist with their military operations, enforcing a blockade on Israeli navigation in the Red and Arabian Seas until a ceasefire in Gaza is achieved. The Yemeni armed forces continue to take all defensive and offensive procedures within the right to defend Yemen, and in confirmation the continued Yemeni position in support of Palestine, the Yemeni armed forces continue to retaliate to any American or British aggression against our country by targeting all sources of the threat. And here we have a video showing the Yemeni defense minister, and I want to read to you what he said here. He said, "We will fight the battle and win. We will defeat their battleships, submarines, and ships that come to Yemeni waters, and we will sink them until they reach the depths of the seas. The upper hand in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden belongs to the people of Yemen. The longer the conflict in Gaza lasts, we will have many surprises." Okay, so that's what this guy said right here. And the French Navy is going to be sending one of their multi-purpose frigates to the Red Sea. It just passed through the Suez Canal. This is the D656 Alsace frigate. Okay, and it's going to be helping Western coalition forces. And Iranian media reported earlier today a kaboom in the industrial zone of the city of Garmsar, which happens to be where the Iranian Space Center is located. Iranian media blamed it on a fighter aircraft breaking the sound barrier, which I personally don't believe, but this happened at an Iranian space center today. And we have reports of CRAM activity over the green zone in Baghdad. Now, a CRAM is a special system designed to destroy incoming artillery fire. It's used by the US military to protect their bases or high value targets. So apparently, someone is launching artillery at the green zone in Baghdad, which is a strip of embassies. Okay, it's supposed to be a safe zone. And the IDF says it carried out an air offensive against a series of Hezbollah sites in 5 different areas on southern Lebanon today. Sites hit by fighter aircraft in the Maroun al Ras area included a military building where Hezbollah operatives were gathered, the IDF says. It says secondary kabooms could be seen, indicating the building was used to store weapons. The IDF says it also hit 3 observation posts and another military building in Marwahin, Shehini, Haibeh, and Tyre Harfa. And the Speaker of the Parliament of Iran said that the Revolutionary Guard will change the angle of its ordnance to point at Israel. Wow, guys. Okay, the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament saying they're going to change the angle of their ordnance so it faces Israel now. Absolutely insane. And I reported over the weekend that there was a massive redeployment of ordnance in Iran towards the Strait of Hormuz area in one of the mountain ranges that faces the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, so they basically redeployed their ordnance so it's closer now to Saudi Arabia, the Strait of Hormuz, and Israel. And the IDF carrying out more air offensives in Lebanon is another sign that basically Lebanon and Israel are about to have a big confrontation. And the EU foreign policy chief, Joseph Borrell, says the way Israel is destroying Hamas will not succeed and that it sows the seed of hatred for generations to come. China's ambassador to the UN says it's high time to implement the two-state solution with concrete steps and calls for full membership for Palestine in the UN. And Sweden's foreign minister says the two-state solution is the only viable option. Now, I want to remind you guys that Joseph Borrell said that the international community has to impose a Palestinian state if Israel is against that, okay? So Joseph Borrell is definitely not on Israel's side, that's for sure. And we're hearing that the heaviest clashes yet have been reported in southern Gaza in the Khan Yunis area as the IDF has launched a new large offensive with 4 brigades. And Fadel Suleiman, a member of Hassan Nasrallah's personal protection squad, was taken out in a kaboom by the Israeli army today in southern Lebanon. Okay, so Nasrallah's bodyguard was taken out by Israel. Okay, Nasrallah is the leader of Hezbollah. And apparently, clashes between Pakistani security forces and the Taliban are continuing on the border with Afghanistan. The Taliban has claimed to have detained a number of Pakistani border guards. So that's not a good sign right there. And Belarus will consider an offensive on its allies as an offensive on its territory in accordance with its new military doctrine. Belarusian General Staff of the Armed Forces Butorin stated on the STV channel. Okay, so what they're saying is that any offensive against Russia, including its recently annexed territories, will be considered an offensive on Belarus. And Belarus now has nuclear weapons, guys. They have Iskander missiles with nuclear warheads. They also have air launched nuclear missiles, some type of cruise missiles or hypersonic missiles. And Russia has trained Belarusian fighter pilots to deploy these missiles. Okay. And the new leftist Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk arrived in Kyiv to meet with Zelensky. And the Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico said Ukraine must give part of its territory to Russia to end the war. He said there must be some compromise. Why do they expect Russians to leave Crimea, Donbass, and Luhansk? It's unrealistic, he said. And in France, farmers are now blocking access to the Galfec nuclear power plant in Tarn-et-Garonne. So these protests are spreading across Europe. These farmers are blocking things with their tractors. It's not just in Germany, it's now in France, and they're blocking access to a nuclear plant. And apparently, hundreds of Italian farmers have entered the city of Bologna, and on some of their tractors, they wrote signs that say, "Betrayed by Europe." And a CME, a coronal mass ejection, will arrive on January the 22nd after 1800 hours UTC time. So that's sometime this evening and tonight. So if you want to see an aurora and you live in the northern tier of the US, if you have a clear sky, you might see one tonight if you face north and you get up on some high ground. And apparently, there's some kind of storm that has left thousands of people without power in the UK. Apparently, there was heavy rain and winds up to 100 miles an hour. This storm is called Isha, okay, some kind of North Atlantic storm. And last night, we had this US nuke sniffer plane flying over northern Australia. Very strange pattern. It took off from Brisbane and then it went over the Indian Ocean. And then once it got near Christmas Island, it turned around and came back. And when it turned around and came back, it started to fly a lot lower. It was only flying at 7,600 feet here. Okay, so very low. And it was flying over the northern coastline of Australia. Okay, so very strange. And NATO sent a reconnaissance plane all the way up to Russia's northern fleet overnight last night. Here we have Jake 17. This is a US RC 135 rivet joint. It's an ISR plane, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance plane. And it went all the way up to the Kola Peninsula, which is where Russia has their northern fleet. That's where they have 2/3 of their nuclear armed submarines in Murmansk. So NATO is definitely on high alert. And a lot of people were sending me emails and comments about this Russian special flight squadron plane that was sitting at Dulles Airport. And this was Lavrov's plane, okay? He is going to the UN Security Council meeting in New York this week. Okay, so nothing to worry about here. Here's the location of that 7.0 magnitude earthquake in China, okay, close to Uzbekistan in the southern Xinjiang province. 7.0, guys, that is really powerful. So that's the latest breaking news that I have. I will be back this evening with more breaking news. Make sure you're subscribed. Hit the bell icon below so you get notified when I post these updates. And until next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere.